Hello, and welcome to my presentation on commodifying tradition, the heritage politics of food in Bolivia and the United States, where we'll be exploring cultural identity through food and politics. So first and foremost, you can see in this picture, this is actually a picture from a Bolivian market. And this is important to look at for several reasons. Number one, you can see some very similar food that we have here in the United States. However, this food is used differently. It is approached differently. You can also see that it is different in how it is sold at a market level. Notice it's not in a commercial market. This is more of a open air market, and the food is not like prepackaged. It's not brought in by any corporations per se, like you would see in the United States, or pre-wrapped or packaged, or there's no little stickers on it saying that it comes from any type of company or organization or particular country or anything like that. It's just brought in by the indigenous population to be sold in these open air markets. So you can see it has a much different approach than, say, the United States. So that's important to understand because today we'll be discussing how food functions as a powerful expression of cultural identity and political meaning in both, obviously, Bolivia and the United States. So we'll look at how the traditions surrounding food reveal deeper histories, power dynamics, and struggles over authenticity and heritage. So to kick things off with our introduction and abstract, just know that this study is going to argue that food is never just food. It carries history, identity, and political significance. In Bolivia, traditional foods resist uh, global commercial pressures. At least they typically do. While in the U.S., commercialization is ubiquitous and often reshapes food traditions. So understanding this contrast helps reveal how societies um, often negotiate their identity. So for our abstract, we're going to emphasize the core comparison, and that's that the fact that Bolivia tends to preserve food traditions as part of its indigenous identity. So, for example, this picture right here is from a restaurant called Pollo's Copacabana, which is a very popular restaurant in Bolivia that you'll find all over the place now. It does serve a staple that you'll find everywhere, even in the local restaurants, fried chicken, which they love. However, you can see that it has become commercialized, similar to what you'll find in the United States now. And so this is kind of these creates this cultural tension with identity and this commodification that I brought up earlier. So Bolivia tends to want to preserve these indigenous identities, as I mentioned, while the United States often transforms food into a commodity. So this creates tension between cultural meaning, market forces, and especially with authenticity has become commercialized, like you can see here in this picture. So, when it comes to food culture, food functions as a cultural artifact. Anthropological scholars like Mintz and Levi Strauss have emphasized that what we eat and how we prepare it often reflects who we are. So, today, globalization challenges these traditional meanings by turning cultural foods into branded products, creating ongoing negotiation between what is tradition and what is commerce. So let's go ahead and take a look at our anthropological foundation. So anthropology teaches us that food is a system of symbols, rituals, and social practices. And anthropologists have done research to show us that meals can communicate a type of social order and remind us that culinary traditions can be political acts that are tied to identity and power. So food is a cultural phenomenon. Food rituals help maintain community identity. So, for example, um, let's say you have holiday traditions like Thanksgiving here in the United States, or they have like San Jose. down in Bolivia where they eat hot dogs for when it's like the colder night of the year. So these help create that community identity, but globalization alters these meanings, sometimes stripping the traditions of their context. And when foods are marketed globally, their symbolic value may be reduced to surface level appeal. So, for example, what could have been a, let's say, a hot dog, for San Jose, um, bought at the local level is sold more at a commercialized level and to more say a global audience, and it starts to lose that symbolic value that it had previously. So, speaking of Bolivian food heritage, Bolivians' food traditions are deeply rooted in their indigenous knowledge and agricultural adaptations to both the Andes and the Amazon, because Bolivia does have both regions in the country. So, these traditions aren't just culinary, though, they're expressions of their ancestral continuity, because Bolivian population is predominantly indigenous still to this day. So, that does play a significant role. So here's some a picture of some traditional foods you might see down in Bolivia, like salteñas, which kind of look like empanadas. It's more of a soupy version of an empanada. You could see some like yuca up here, potato soup. Potatoes is very common, especially in the highlands. Very common food, like frozen potato, which is known as chuno. So lots of different types of foods that you may see in different parts of the country, depending on what region you're in. So these foods like potatoes, quinoa is another one you may see in the grocery store, or aji peppers are culturally and spiritually meaningful. Festivals, such as the big one every year down in Bolivia, Carnival de Oruro, help strengthen these communities and their identity, and initiatives as well, which use gastronomy or the culinary arts to assert their culinary sovereignty and help promote economic strength. Now we'll take a look at U.S. food heritage. So turning now to the U.S., we'll see that industrialization dramatically has reshaped American cuisine, prioritizing convenience, branding, and mass production over tradition. So, as mentioned earlier, with Thanksgiving, these traditional foods like Thanksgiving dishes, let's say we're like Southern barbecue, for example, have been commodified. Meanwhile, authenticity movements like farm to table, you have like farmers markets, for example, try to reclaim meaning in a system that has been dominated by fast food and commercialization. So when comparing the two countries, food heritage operates differently in each cultural context, but both face similar global pressures, which is important to understand. So Bolivia adopts a more defensive approach, protecting their indigenous heritage, obviously, while the U.S. often markets authenticity as a desirable lifestyle rather than something to hold on to. So both must navigate globalization, identity debates, and economic pressures, but they do so in their own ways. So, in conclusion, food is a cultural context. It does reveal how societies express their identity, assert their sovereignty, and negotiate power in an interconnected world. And some key takeaways from this presentation and from this analysis is that food heritage is not static, and to survive global pressures, traditions must adapt while still preserving cultural meaning. Bolivia and the United States demonstrate two very different but equally complex strategies for protecting and redefining their food heritage. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for sticking by, and you have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.